So the last thing we're going to do in this lesson is review some definitions related to data. We know in order to do analytics, you need to have data. It's about using data to make an informed decision. Some of the definitions we use for different types of data in this course are going to be slightly different than those used in statistics, but they're just alternate names for the same thing. So that's why we need to review them here to make sure that when we talk about different types of data, we can use both the new or old definitions and be comfortable with both. So we're going to fill in these definitions, do some examples of different types of data, and then look at a larger example of classifying all the definitions together. So first is just the definition of data. It can be numerical or it can be textual facts and figures collected through some type of measurement process. So that could be something as simple as an online survey. You could answer a numerical question like how old are you or how much money do you make. You could also answer like a text-based question like do you agree with this statement, yes or no? What is your gender? Male, female, prefer not to say, etc. The data that's collected about different people, we would call a data set. So if I asked everyone in this class to fill in that survey answering questions about themselves and took all your information together, that would be the data set. We call a database a collection of related files containing records on people, places, and things. For this, think about like a human resources department, even the human resources department at Cambrian College. They would have multiple files related to one person. So for one employee, they might have information about personal information, like emergency contacts, information about them, their social insurance number. They would have job evaluations, like performance appraisals on record. They would have a lot of information about their income. They would have tax records, all these things together where we have different files that can contain records on the same people, places, or things that you can match up on those characteristics would be considered files in the database. The person or place or thing that you store information about is called the entity. So if I got you to fill in the survey, if Jenna filled in the survey, for example, Jenna would be the entity, the person that filled in that information, and then each person gives their individual responses. We call the columns that you would use to organize data in a table the fields. They can also be called attributes and they can also be called variables. So there's lots of different names for that one that you can fill in this box here. You might need to make it a bit bigger like I did too to fit them all. And then the things that we would put into the rows are called records or cases. Depending on which textbook you use, which course you're learning it in, some people would call it a record, some a case. Once you have data, we also need to classify it according to if you have numerical data or if you don't have numerical data. The first type of data that you can sort into categories based on characteristics is called categorical. In statistics, we also call this qualitative. Think about things like your hair color, gender, program, type of vehicle you drive, or letter grade. We thought of lots of examples of these in your statistics course, but basically anything you can classify according to text. So another one would be any kind of yes/no question that you could ask, like do you like this course? Type of computer you have. Maybe you have a Mac or Lenovo or Dell, etc. Or even the type of water bottle you have. Like, do you have a Stanley or Owala? Is it Owala? Owala. Or Hydro Flask. Or maybe a Mammoth mug. There's all these different brands. So anything you can put into text-based categories, that would be categorical. Our textbook uses categorical. In the past, in statistics, we use qualitative. The other one is something that actually has numbers. It has a numerical value. In this course, we will call that a metric. Metric is the name used in business for any kind of numerical reported value that's used to help you quantify business information. In statistics, we just called it quantitative because it has a number or a quantity associated with it. But as I mentioned, in business, it's common to use the word metric because like it's quantifying the performance of your business. Examples of quantitative or metric data are height, weight, distance, time, number of people, anything you can count or measure. If we want to think about specific business related examples, you might say something like profit or money earned in a day. Um, Another one related to business could be like quantity of items produced, like on a production line. Like if you're making cars, how many cars can get out of the factory per day? Could also be something like hours on timesheets. So, like, how many hours did each employee work? Something that helps you quantify performance of your business. For metrics or for quantitative data, we can further break them down into two further categories. If you can count the number of options, we call it discrete. This would be things like a number of people where you can't have half of a person. It has to be a whole number that can be counted. Number of bedrooms, number of heads appearing when you toss a coin. Those are all examples of discrete variables. And the other option is you can have continuous data where the outcome can take any measured value. So basically it means it can have a decimal, whereas discrete has to have a whole number. So things that are continuous with measured values could include your height, weight, distance, time, age, if you're counting like down to the nearest second for how old you are, for example, not just a whole number of years. And those are the exact same definitions as they had in statistics, just instead of calling them quantitative, we are calling them metrics. So for our final example, I have some fake data on people, program, the type of computer you're using, how many displays you have. So if you have a single monitor or two monitors, is what that means. How confident the person feels in Excel, and how confident they feel in statistical theory. These are just made up values. They're not actually recorded, and the names used, Jenna, Craig, and Chris, are coordinators of the BBA and ACGC programs. For this example, what we want to do is talk about these various definitions where we can name them in this data set, and for each of the variables, identify if they are qualitative or metrics. For the metrics, we can also say if they're discrete or continuous. Okay, so first, this whole thing would be called the data set. So this is a data set. Data set. And then we have specific names for what's used in the rows and what's used in the columns. For these rows, for each person, Jenna, Craig, and Chris, this is information about that person. So we call this row information in the data the records or the cases. So each person has a record, or you can call it a case. The other direction, so I'll pick a new color. Let's do blue. So this way, all of those different columns like name, program, computer, displays, Excel, statistical theory, those are what we call the fields or attributes or variables. I'll just put fields or variables, skip attributes for now just to fit it in. We commonly call them variables in statistics. So this would be like variable number 1, variable number 2, all the way up to 3, 4, 5, 6, variable number 6. Each of the records or cases are for a different person. That's what we call the entities. When I said we're talking about a specific person, place, or thing for which you record information, those are the entities. In our previous course in Excel, we would have called it, or statistics, sorry, we would have called it an identifier variable. A couple more things we want to do. is for each of the variables, variable 1 to 6, we want to say if they're categorical or if they're a metric. And if it's a metric, if it's discrete or continuous. So for the program, GBBA, HBBA, other, those are categories, so that would be categorical. For computer, if you have a Windows or a Mac, or both, that would be categorical. For number of displays, that is actually a number. So it's a metric, but can you have like a 0.5 of a display? Usually it should be a whole number, which means it should be discrete because it's something you count, not something you measure. You just count how many displays you have. For how confident you are in Excel, usually if you were asked this question, you'd have a scale that you could rank from like unconfident to very confident, but it is captured in text, so that would be categories, and same with statistical theory. It's recorded in the same way, all the way from unconfident to very confident, so it would be categories. So those are our important definitions here. Each number or piece of text is called data. The whole table is called the data set. The entities are Jenna, Craig, and Chris. The fields or variables are the 6 columns in the table, and the records or the cases are the 3 rows in the table. If you added more people to this made-up data set, you have to add more rows. And then, for all the variables that aren't the entities or the identifier variables, we said if they were categorical or if they were metrics. And that is the review of different types of data that you need to know before our second lesson in the course. In the second lesson, we're going to actually start to look at some statistical methods that can be applied to data sets in order to help us perform analytics. So thank you so much for watching this video. As I mentioned in the first video, all of your lessons will have the same type of format where you'll have your title page and then you'll have different sheets for the different things you'll be learning. Usually each sheet will be in one separate video. In future lessons, you'll have way more calculations to follow along with and to try on your own rather than definitions. But in this first introduction lesson, we stuck just to our definitions for analytics, the 3 different areas of analytics: descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive, and finally a review of different data types. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your professor. Thank you.